I was introduced to my first tabletop role-playing game, Pathfinder, in 2011. I played ravenously until a friend invited me to their Dungeons and Dragons game in 2014. The new 5th edition had just dropped, and they wanted to try it out. I instantly realized how much more the system appealed to me and jumped ship for D&D and have been playing it ever since. I meet my friends through D&D. I met my longtime partner through D&D. I eventually landed a job as a professional dungeon master, which I held for 3 years. I started this YouTube channel talking primarily about 5th edition D&D. It's 2025 and D&D has moved on to its next phase with the 2024 Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide and the upcoming 2025 Monster Manual. For me, and maybe for others, it's offered a time to reassess the game and consider where we go from here. In this video, I want to look back at where I've been. This is not a historical retrospective on 5e, nor do I think it is demonstrative of the average player's experience, but I do hope some of y'all watching this video will consider your experience and how it compares or contrasts with mine, and how that makes you feel moving forward with D&D or with tabletop role-playing in general. So, how much time and money have I spent on this favorite hobby of mine? So I have 13 5th edition books that I purchased for $490. 5 of these books were purchased before I worked at the game store that I worked at, which gave me a hefty 40% discount, making a much more manageable $30 price tag for the remaining books. Miniatures, I have spent $1,500 on. This is a very rough estimate, but I own around 300 miniatures. And again, given my hefty employee discount, I'm averaging each one to be a conservative $5 each. Accessories, $910. This covers dice, maps, GM screens, and everything else. This was a difficult figure to come across, so again, a rough estimate. Roll20, $600. That's 11 digital books at $30 each, plus some map packs and 2 years of premium subscription. The grand total comes to $3,500 or $350 a year, which I think is actually not that much for a big hobby. Time-wise, barely a week has passed in the last 10 years that I did not play one session of D&D. More typically, I was running or playing 2 or 3 games a week, and this peaked during my time as a professional dungeon master where I was running up to 6 games a week. That's died down in the past year or two, but I think I can safely average out 3 games per week. That comes out to 156 sessions in a year, or 1,560 sessions over 10 years. My professional sessions ran 2 hours with kids, 3 hours with adults. My personal sessions tend to run into the 4 hours and beyond range, so let's say 3.5 hours per session. That's 546 hours per year, or 5,460 hours over the last decade. Now, anyone who plays or especially runs D&D will tell you that it's not all about playing the game. You read your books or your forums, you watch YouTube videos about D&D, and if you are a dungeon master, you have to prepare your sessions. Even though my campaign prep has been cut down drastically in the last 3 years, I used to spend more time on prep than I did actually running a session, so my rough estimate evens out to an equal time thinking about D&D that I spend actually playing D&D. We're up to over 10,000 hours of D&D over the last 10 years, meaning I've spent 455 days or over 1 year playing and thinking about D&D during that time. And is that a lot? I'm not sure. How much time and money does a football fan spend watching and thinking about football? How much time do serious video gamers log playing across all their games in a 10-year period? I'm coming up with this stat not to be judgmental about myself or others, but to give some perspective. I have apparently given 10% of my life to this game. What has it given me? What do I like so much about 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons? I like the stories that we tell, I like character builds, I like monsters and encounter design, and I like the friends I made along the way. So, describing what I liked about D&D seemed like a sensible progression for this video, and yet I struggled for probably a week to articulate what I actually enjoy about this game. Even after coming up with that short list, each point has a big asterisk next to it. Sure, I like all of these elements, but why do I like them? I like the stories we tell, but does 5e D&D actually facilitate these stories? Not really. Looking back, my favorite parts of my favorite adventures came from contributions of myself and my friends that often had little to do with what the dice or the rules or the books dictated. That was our imagination and teamwork at play, not D&D. I like character builds, and liking character builds has a lot to do with mastery of D&D's numerous and convoluted systems of class, species, feats, spells, and other features. Making something that goes beyond a standard build takes time and knowledge, so cracking that code feels like finishing a puzzle. But does that puzzle need to exist? After a while, and especially after working with lots of kids trying to get into the game, all those systems start to feel like more of an obstacle than a feature. I like monsters in encounter design, but for much the same reason, encounter design is a notorious obstacle in 5e's design that has to be overcome by good dungeon masters. I am proud of my encounter design. I think it might be my best skill as a DM, but I only feel that way because it's so easy for us to fail at it because of the inadequate tools laid out in the monster manual and the dungeon master's guide. I like the friends I make along the way. This can obviously be done with a lot of hobbies or a lot of different games within the tabletop umbrella. The only thing that makes D&D 5e special is that the D&D brand is so ubiquitous with TTRPGs that it's the seemingly accessible option everyone gravitates towards. So, what I don't like about D&D, brand dominance. It's hard to talk about tabletop role-playing games to someone new to them because they haven't heard of TTRPGs, but they probably heard of D&D. Which means when they come to my game store or sign their kid up for a summer camp, they are going to go for the recognizable option and demand D&D, which means that all the game store can sustainably supply is D&D programs. So for 3 years all I could invest my time, money and mastery into was D&D, which created a cycle when my friends want to play a personal game and all I feel I can offer in return is D&D. And I'm sure you've encountered similar situations without the pressures of the game job. Everyone has heard of D&D, so good luck introducing them to Pathfinder when they really want to try the game from Stranger Things. Now you've bought 3 D&D books and you can't afford another RPG book, so you only play D&D. Not because it's the best, not because it's the easiest, but because it's the most recognizable. This is the source of D&D's sunk cost fallacy for so many players and DMs. It is the game's greatest strength, and it is my least favorite part of it. The rules. I actually like the rules of 5e, and I don't just mean advantage and disadvantage, I mean the nitty gritty things like cover and mounted combat. The best games I've been a part of were the ones where I knew the rules and stuck to them, and the worst games were the ones where the DM handed out their 10-page document of house rules. My issue comes in with how D&D's rules, as written, are told to the players and the DMs. D&D doesn't have a rule book. D&D doesn't have a rules glossary. D&D has 3 core books and a bunch of sage advice Twitter posts necessary to fully understand the rules. And the more the game expands with new settings, monsters, and player options, the more interactions there are that deserve an explanation but often don't have one. The pressure falls on the DM to make the calls, which often don't seem correct. I don't blame the DMs though. I blame wizards for not making their product legible and easily referenced. Let's talk about how long it takes to get started. For as simple as I've heard people describe 5th edition, there's actually a lot going on your first character sheet. You have to understand the 6 abilities and why there are 2 numbers associated with each one. You have to understand how those abilities tie to saves and skills. You have to understand how attack and damage work, and how damaging cantrips and spells are like an attack but different. You have to understand the different actions you can take on your turn. Finally, there's the abilities that are unique to your chosen class, which are different from what your friend is trying to understand on their character sheet. That's a lot to ask for from kids and adults who just want to jump in and play this game everybody's talking about. High level spells and abilities. D&D offers you a lot in those $50 books. It creates a vision where you constantly want to move forward as a player and progress into cooler abilities and equipment, and as a DM, you want to run more challenging monsters and environments. By the time you start reaching those heights, the core game experience starts falling apart. In my ongoing campaign with friends, characters have reached 15th level. We spend about 1/3 of our time on the core game loop, that's travel to a location, roll perception and such, battle an enemy, collect rewards, rest, and repeat. And a third of the time managing our Game of Thrones level cast of nobles and intrigue. And the final third of the game reading and interpreting high level spells and abilities that dominate how combat, exploration, and the narrative itself are determined. These aren't a linear progression of power, they branch off into totally new approaches to the game, which can be exciting in concept, but in practice often wind up being tedious and frustrating to deal with. Currently, I have only one ongoing 5e D&D campaign. That is my Borka game, which I have posted about on this channel, but stopped posting about because the story at this point has so many characters and plot points that it feels impossible to talk about to someone who's not playing it. And I'm kind of okay with that. This world exists for me and my 4 friends, and the moments we create are special for us. I'm absolutely going to keep playing that campaign. We currently have characters at level 15, and my hope is that we take it to level 20, something I've never done in my 10-year D&D career. If and when we reach that point, I'll probably make a video about how it went. But otherwise, I'm trying to think of a scenario where I play 2014 5e D&D again. If it's with old friends and they insist on playing D&D for a new campaign, we're probably going to move forward into the 2024 rules. If it's somebody new coming to me to show them the ropes because they've heard I'm the D&D guy, I'm going to try my best to nudge them towards starting with Dungeon World, a game that I think hits all the bullet points of D&D's fantasy without all the rules baggage and difficult onboarding. And if my friends just want a good dungeon crawly action and roleplay time, my go-to TTRPG right now is Symbaroum, a game I am enjoying diving back into and want to explore more and talk more about. Yes, I've invested a ton of time, money, and mastery into the 5e system, but that doesn't mean I have to keep going back to it. As far as my professional experience goes, running 5e D&D is sadly the one skill in the world that I am best at. I have honed it to an art and proven my success with it. But that doesn't mean I have to keep monetizing it. I don't believe in the product anymore. I don't like promoting Wizards and Hasbro. And I don't like the experiences I make for money nearly as much as I enjoy the experiences I make with friends. I don't have the hustle in me, and I don't think that's a bad thing. With all that being said, I'm not resentful of the time I've spent playing 5e D&D. I have a lot of good memories and a lot of pride in what my friends and I made for ourselves. That doesn't mean I have to keep chasing that same high when I can explore different things within the TTRPG space I already know I love. Thanks for listening. I hope if you play 5e D&D, this helps you reflect on your own experience and consider how you are going to move forward with this game. Let me know in the comments if my perspective was helpful or if there's anything I missed or should elaborate on. Will you keep playing D&D 5e? If so, I'd love to hear why. That's all for now. Have a nat 20 day. Bye bye.